What will it take for Michigan to be a very, very good team in 2025? I think a lot of the elements are there for the Wolverines. Spring ball's telling us some things that I think are positive. There's some other things that I think might be a little jarring, but we will find out more coming up on Saturday. So let's talk about what Michigan needs to have happen on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, was not on the ground today. Probably will not be tomorrow, but we'll see. Depends on timing of some of these things. But nonetheless, so with that in mind, we're not going to be talking about linebackers and special teams because that's what they talked about today in Ann Arbor. Like I said, I did not make it down there, but one of the things that I had some long conversations over the weekend about where Michigan seems to be, where it's going and all of that. Obviously, we talk a ton about Bryce Underwood, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the receivers and everything. But I think the most important thing is to look at the schedule. And I'm going to actually, I had the schedule pulled up. Ever had problems with Apple Mouse where it's just like, yeah, I'm not going to operate correctly. I'm going to do my own thing. I've got my own ideas of what I want to do. I think it all for Michigan starts with the schedule, right? Because keeping in mind, Michigan went 8-5 last year, 7-5 in the regular season, right? Of course, Buckeye fans that love to come at Michigan fans love to kind of just ignore the win over Alabama. You know, second string Michigan taking down first string Alabama, pretty impressive. But obviously, we've talked about how the schedule is. It goes home away, home away, home away, home away, home away, away, home. I hope I did that right. But when you look at the caliber of teams that Michigan's facing, even though some of them are going to be improved, it is not anywhere close to being on the caliber of what Michigan had last year. So that's number one, right, is from the opening jump, right? Because you had Fresno State, which was like the type of group of five team you don't really want to face in week one, right? It's kind of like Middle Tennessee back in 2019. And obviously Shea Patterson got injured on his very first play from scrimmage. That doesn't go very well, all that kind of stuff. But I think that when you look at the schedule this year, having New Mexico, Oklahoma, Central Michigan, Nebraska, that is a heck of a lot better than Fresno State, Texas, Arkansas State, and USC. I mean, that was kind of a brutal start. Granted, all of those games were at home. That helped. This is home away, home away. But it does help just to be able to have like, okay, we can get Bryce going against what might end up being the worst team in college football straight out the gates, right? Like this is defense that he's going to be facing is just like a smidge better than the best defense he maybe saw playing high school ball. I mean, it will be better, right? Because these are still college scholarship athletes, but it's not necessarily going to be one of those scenarios where he gets, we're assuming it's Bryce, where he's going to go up against a defense that is going to throw a lot more at him like he will the following week against Oklahoma. But I think, though, let's say that there's some upset at Oklahoma. And, when I say upset, I just mean Michigan is upset about the finality of it. Let's say it doesn't work out in Michigan's favor. You got Central Michigan to contend with the following week. So that helps out quite a bit, right? This isn't like, and I mean, Arkansas State was kind of that for Michigan last year, or at least it was supposed to be. And then it just went off the rails, right? Like Michigan got a commanding lead. And before you know it, Arkansas State's kind of within striking distance as the game is winding down. I don't expect that to be the case in either New Mexico or Central Michigan. There's a lot of room for error in those games, and Michigan should still win those handily. But obviously it starts with the defense, because you've got a defense that basically minus two guys, Quentin Johnson and Amir Hall, played in that Alabama game, and even though like some of them were rotational, Brandon Hillman was, rotational, Mason Curtis was rotational. You had basically the full complement of players that are going to be seeing the field a lot this year, even to the point where you had key plays being made by your second string edge rushers. You had key plays being made by your second string defensive tackles. You had your, a full complement of linebackers playing in that game. So like there's a lot defensively that you look at going up against what was a really good offense. I'd have to look, and we will look, and see where Alabama kind of fell on the spectrum of offenses. But obviously Michigan held its own, so that number went down. But Alabama had at least functional offense, and it had its main offense out there. Now, it wasn't their lowest output of the season. That came against Oklahoma when they only scored 3 points. But generally, I mean, it was a functional offense with, Ja'Den McBurrows. We saw them kind of come alive against Georgia in the first half. The 42nd rated offense, right? So, I mean, that kind of tells you that how good this defense could be. When it came to yards, it was also the second lowest output they had in terms of yards in a game. Again, that Oklahoma game was where it kind of shifted, right? They had 234 yards against Oklahoma, 3 points, 260 yards and 13 points against Michigan. So that's just a big difference. And I think that if Michigan, compared to some of those other games, right? Like against Georgia, they had 547 yards. Against, in a loss to Vanderbilt, they still had 400 yards. Against ranked Missouri, who they shut out, they ended up having almost 500 yards. They had 600 yards against Western Kentucky, right? Like they had the ability to do a lot. They scored 42 points against Wisconsin. You look at all of those things, and Michigan's defense held them to 13, their second lowest output. So it starts with the defense. So that kind of brings me to the point of what Michigan needs in order just to take that next step is just functionality offensively. That's what they need. Because you look through what they had, they didn't have functionality on either side of the ball for the first half of the season for the most part. Like there were just issues that happened, and we'll get into that here in a moment. But it wasn't just the issues there. It was the offense. It wasn't complementary football. Michigan just needs a functional enough offense to be able to play complementary football. And based off of a lot of the things we're hearing, on the record, off the record, it kind of sounds like that's what Michigan has. So let's get to a little bit about the offense, and then we'll kind of bring everything together in the end after that. So we'll do that. We will get to all of that here in just a moment. But before we do, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. That hasn't changed a ton, but it has changed, certainly. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. I'm still trying to understand the one comment that I got from somebody on Friday's show on YouTube. If you watched the show, I mean, you could hear it if you listened to it, but if you watched the show, we did it in the car. That was out of necessity because I had plans at 7 p.m. and I was stuck in traffic for 2.5 hours. So once we hit the 2-hour mark, I'm like, okay, let's just do the show in the car, and that way I know like all I have to do is get home, edit it, and it will be done. But someone said that I stole the concept from another Michigan podcaster. I don't know who you're talking about. Not like that was why I responded that way. So if you know who he's talking about, tell me. I just want to know. But he said that I stole the idea and wasn't giving credit where credit was due. It had nothing to do with trying to hey, that person, I would never do a show in the car if I felt like when I have good camera, good microphone, lighting, I would never do a show in a car willingly. That's not how we do things around here. That was improvise, adapt, overcome. Okay. But I'm curious who he's talking about regardless. Anyway, let's talk about the offense, because now Bryce is the big game changer. We've heard tons about the idea, his ability to throw downfield. We keep on hearing 70-yard bombs about, we hear that from both quarterbacks, but you see some of the videos that Michigan put out over the weekend. You're seeing like a mixture of guys who can uncork it and guys who can catch it, right? Like the Jamar Browder tip drill going into the end zone, incredible. I don't know how much you're going to read into Logan Forbes making a nice catch on an out route. There was another player, then there was Samaj who had a nice kind of go up and high point it and all that kind of stuff. But by all accounts, it sounds like the quarterbacks that are doing good. And this is the chicken and the egg of it all. Are the wide receivers also doing better because the quarterback play is better? And which one's which, right? Is it the quarterback making the wide receivers better, or the wide receivers just also better and helping out a young quarterback that's still got to figure some things out? Because as far as his talent, Bryce Underwood's where JJ McCarthy was at the time JJ departed the program. As far as his ability to make every throw on the field, to do it with accuracy, all of that stuff. Now, JJ at least had multiple times where he had to go up against top-tier college defenses. Bryce has gone up against one. From all accounts, it's been pretty good. I mean, it's been a couple weeks, but we've heard he wasn't really turning the ball over a ton. So that's positive, right? But that's one element. The other thing that he needs to get to that we don't know, and this is going to play a big difference, right, is being able to know enough to call protections, do certain things. Now, Connor was on one of those podcasts a couple weeks ago. Can't remember if it was on 3 or if it was, I think it was Crane and Company, where he was talking about how watching Bryce make those protection calls, make those line switches, make those like, hey, I got to flip the receiver, I got to flip the running back, all that kind of stuff. That he was able to do that. He was able to diagnose things that it's kind of an innate ability of his, but it's going to be different at the college level. So that's one of the questions. But it does seem, if I was to redo my position group rankings where I had wide receiver at the very bottom, I would put them up a notch at least. The problem for me is I don't really know who's worse. Outside of one position group, I'm still extremely skeptical on, even though we did a show saying like, hey, maybe last week saying maybe this position group is actually coming along. I'm still skeptical just based off of things that I hear behind the scenes. And also you see things like Pete Nakos out there saying that Michigan's looking at offensive linemen in the portal in the spring window. That makes me a little bit leery about the offensive line. Because if they felt solid with Evan Link at left tackle, like it feels like Andrew Sprague. Like I'm not hearing anything about someone else that is getting a ton of reps at right tackle. It's Andrew Sprague. Evan Link says when I'm playing inside, if I'm at right guard, it's Andrew Sprague on the other end. So it does seem like they're still trying to figure out their combinations of who's going to be the best. And it does not necessarily mean like that it's going extremely well. So I am a little leery about that because as Michigan's offensive line goes, as well its offense, that said, I still think that they can have a functional offense even if the offensive line is met. Because I think they've got enough pieces, and I don't know how much, when you look at the schedule, how much are they going to see teams that are going to get after it up front? Oklahoma? Yes. Maybe Nebraska. I'm not that concerned about Wisconsin or USC or Washington or Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, or Maryland. And actually, like talking to some people, Ohio State, I've heard that they feel that their defensive line is the weakness of their team. So really, it's Oklahoma that kind of scares a little bit because I think their defensive line is probably going to be pretty good, or at least their front is going to be pretty good. Oklahoma and Nebraska are the biggest ones. Michigan State lost most of its group this year. USC didn't have that great of a line last year, and they lost some of their best players, to boot. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to be good. They still brought in some guys. I can't remember the name of the defensive tackle. There was a defensive tackle Michigan wanted that ended up going to USC via the transfer portal. But, it's still, that feels like a work in progress. So that is where I kind of have some issues, but Bryce's mobility could help alleviate that as well, because that's one of the other things we've heard is like, you think you got him and then he's gone. He's got more speed, not to like hyperbolize him. And I don't, if you're a rival fan, just ignore this. Okay. I know you won't, but like as a recruit, like what his abilities are. I was asked yesterday, is he like Cam Newton? I'd say he's He's maybe not as fast as Cam Newton, but he has that type of running ability. But I would also say he's more accurate. And I think that's where Trevor Lawrence, like, he might not be as accurate as Trevor Lawrence, but I think he's faster than him with that type of mobility. I'm not trying to put too much on him. That's just the scouting report. What is Bryce Underwood good at? He can throw with accuracy, and he can do so downfield, and he can run. That can help out a lot of those different things. I mean, we think the running game is going to be good. Now I start to think that the passing game is going to be pretty good. But, you need the offensive line to be able to kind of hold its own, and that is where things can blow up. But I do think that they can have some complementary football, right? Because that's where you look at what Michigan didn't have last year. You look at the Fresno State game, 30-10, but it was 23-10 with them driving late until the Will Johnson pick six. Texas was basically out of hand in the first half because the defense couldn't hold its own. The offense also couldn't, but it started with the defense. Defense kept on getting into third and longs and, winning on first and second down and then losing. That was a theme that kept on going up until really the second half of the Oregon game. And then in Indiana, it was kind of a problem in the first half and then was solved in the second. A functional offense beats Indiana. A functional offense has a chance against Oregon. A functional offense doesn't end up having the issues they had against USC or Minnesota. A functional offense beats Washington. A functional offense last year, Michigan goes into that Ohio State game at worst 9-2. And then you look at the schedule and it's so much more amenable this year because there just aren't a lot of teams. Now, someone could jump out of nowhere like Indiana did last year. That's the difference with the transfer portal. But at the same time, I feel like things look pretty well. Now, Michigan, I think I kind of covered a little bit of the where it goes from here, like the plan for the third segment. But I think like Michigan's lost some guys to the transfer portal. We're kind of hearing kind of what they might want to do in the transfer portal. So let's actually do that in segment 3. We will get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, transfer portal is not even officially open yet. Opens next week, but 4 entrants thus far in the transfer portal, and it's kind of sad to see some of the guys go. Today it's Ja'Den McBurrows, right? Like he was the one where it was like we weren't really talking about him a ton, right? Because even as we were talked about Michigan having all these nickels and stuff like that, which is where he would like really kind of shine. He did well against Maryland. I mean, as well as you could. That game was kind of a disaster at a lot of fronts, offensively, defensively, talking about 2023. But, like it felt like he just could not get or stay healthy. You had he'll always be a hero, not only for, him taking a couple for the team in the tunnel after the 2022 Michigan State game, but then getting the interception the following year. Granted, the game was well in hand, but still, it felt like a nice little moment for him. But, it's like hey, maybe that should have gone better than it did type of scenario for him. Omarion Walker, kind of the same. Not surprised, although it's just, especially because like we talk about Omarion Walker on the show, I think on Thursday, and then like get the show done, and it's not even uploaded and he's in the transfer portal. That's how that always seems to go, right? Say like, hey, this guy, maybe he could step up. I saw him walking in the building not too long ago, so it's like he was still around, but didn't have a number. Heard he was working through something. Okay, there it is. That's what he's working through. Not going to be here. Alessandro Lorenzetti, guy that I kind of never really thought that he was going to see the field. No offense to him. And then Jason Hewlett, who was a guy we talked about a bunch and kind of said like, when people ask like who's going to be in the portal, people always ask that. Like he was the one where I'm like, well, not because there was any intel there. It's just like that. Where is he? What's he doing? What's kind of sad about him leaving is now all 4 guys that they got in the late 2023 cycle after the Ohio State game that were out of the state of Ohio, all of them are gone. All of them. It's kind of wild, right? Remember, it started with Cam Calhoun, who committed while on campus at Ohio State after the 2022 game, immediately after. Like, get back from the press conference, I got to write an article about how Michigan just got a commitment from an Ohio kid. Then after that, I don't remember the order. You had Breon Ishmael, Jason Hewlett, and who else? DJ Waller. Of those, Waller was considered to be the one. Then you got Cam Calhoun, who's kind of carved out a little niche for himself, going to Utah and starting there, and then now he's at Alabama. Interesting that, but it's kind of sad to see that happen. But it's so, I mean, like, they lose another defensive back, but that kind of maybe tells you that things are going well in terms of what they're kind of being able to bring to the table in terms of corners, nickels, all of that stuff. Because, like, why is he entering now? It's like not even the spring game. You think, again, they're not airing the spring game until next week Sunday. So still, if you're not going to the game, you're not going to see it for 13 days. But, and granted, we'll have a post show, we'll have a reaction that night about the what we saw in the spring game. We'll also, I'll have like a live blog on it on Wolverines Wire. But, it's, why are they not even getting to the point where they're playing in the spring game? That's kind of interesting in and of itself, these 4 guys. I know you're kind of getting ahead of it, but like you think, okay, I could have one more shot with my brothers. I have one more time that I can go out there and do it. So, but that tells you, right, like Alessandro Lorenzetti was an offensive lineman who switched to defensive line. No surprise that, like, that position group is insanely deep, right? Because, like, we're here, not only the 6 we've talked about, we also heard mentions of, like, Manuel Beagle and David Pale. So it's like, okay, maybe they're 8 deep at some point there. Then you lose Ja'Den McBurrows, and you're like, okay, well, maybe they're a lot deeper in terms of nickel. Been feeling good about Mason Curtis, or Jeremiah Lowe's name seems to keep coming up, right? Like he has that kind of look as being that nickel. I kind of said that before knowing that he was even going to be there. Amarian Walker, all the talent in the world. I've always been told it's what's between the ears, and has not been able to kind of get to that point, and also dealt with a lot of health issues. And then the last one being Jason Hewlett. We're hearing more about Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, Cole Sullivan, compared to a guy who's entering year 3 and not gotten a single mention. So kind of sad to see it go that way. And certainly there will probably be more guys. There's still not really any telling if they have to be down to 105 by the season. And if that's the case, you're going to see more go. But it's interesting. And it'll just be interesting to see where Michigan kind of puts its attention when the transfer portal opens after the spring game. So anyway, I feel good just to kind of wrap everything up and kind of feel this out. I feel good about Michigan's ability to be a team. Like, the way I look at it, like, could Michigan lose 4 or 5 games? Absolutely. Any team could. And I know, like, you probably would look at Ohio State and say they can't, but no, they absolutely can. I don't think they will. I think Michigan's realistic floor is 9-3. I know they're like 8-4 according to Tom Fornelli, but like the realistic floor is 9-3. 10-2 is, I think, a very realistic prediction. And it would not surprise me if they went 11-1 or undefeated. Again, the schedule is amenable to that. The only thing about it is if they had more home games, you'd feel a little bit better about it. But the whole home away, that alternating, it's going to be hard for them to get into a rhythm. But I think they've got some players. If that offensive line can just be functional, then I think they're off to the races. So that's that. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back on Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.